One of the questions I've seen circling around the comments and have been asked frequently is, how do I know when to reach out to a literary agent? The truth is, there's, rarely a perfect time for anything in life, and finding a literary agent is no different. But today I'm going to try to help you figure out if you are ready to look for a literary agent by providing a checklist of things that you absolutely need to have before you send out your queries. If you are anywhere along the book writing or publishing journey, I recommend subscribing to my channel. I talk a lot about how to find a literary agent, how to refine your manuscript, and insider tips about the traditional publishing industry. So I'd love to have you around. The first and most important thing that you must have before you reach out to a literary agent is a completed book manuscript. Writers sometimes will say, I know that agents might take 3 to 6 months to get back to my query, so can I just have the first 3 chapters done and kind of feel out if this is a project I should pursue? Can I have half of the manuscript done? The answer is no. You really have to have the entire manuscript complete, and there is a clear reason why. If an agent is interested in your project, the very next step that they are going to take is to request the full manuscript. And you really don't want to delay that by too much because you want to kind of strike the iron while it's hot. So you need to have that ready to send to them as soon as they request it. The only exception to this rule is if you are working on a nonfiction book, because those can be sent to agents if you just have an outline and some sample pages. But I think most of you are working on novels, so you need to have the total draft done. The second thing that you need before you reach out to agents is initial feedback from readers. The reason this is so important is because you really don't want to just send that very first draft of your book to an agent. I know it can be hard and nerve-wracking to share your work with readers, but you really need to have that initial feedback, because if you're the only one who has read your book, then you really don't know how others are going to react to it. And if you share it with some readers and you get similar feedback from them, at least some of the agents you're reaching out to are going to have that exact same feedback. So you want to kind of nip these problems from the beginning by addressing them before you even send to agents. Not only do you want to get this feedback, but you of course want to then revise the manuscript accordingly, paying special attention to those first 10 pages, because typically the first 10 pages are what the agent is going to read first and will be what determines if they want to request the full manuscript. So focus especially on those, but I really recommend having either beta readers, friends, family, or a professional editor even look at the entire manuscript to ensure you're really putting your best foot forward when you are approaching agents. You kind of only get one shot per agent, so you want to make sure you are giving them your best. The next must-have before you query literary agents is a polished query letter. The query letter is a really critical component of your submission package, so you want to take the time to craft a very thoughtful and polished letter. It is also important to make sure that you tailor and personalize each individual query letter to the agent you are sending it to. This ensures that you are showing the agent that you've done your homework and you know why your book is a great fit for them. So even though you might be anxious to get those queries out and you just kind of want to be done with it, because I know the process can be grueling, resist that temptation and really take the time to do it right. It's a really good idea to have someone look over your query letter as well for 2 reasons. One, you want to make sure that there are no, grammatical or spelling mistakes, so make sure you have someone who has a great eye for that proofread the query letter. But secondly, ask some friends or a beta reader again, or an editor, if the way that you're presenting your book makes them want to read it, because that is the entire purpose of the query letter. You want the agent to say, oh my gosh, I want to read that, let me get the full manuscript. If you're in the process of working on your query letter, I recommend checking out my video on how to write the perfect book blurb for your query letter. This is the part where you are describing your book, and it is one of the most important components of the query letter, so make sure to check out those tips so you really nail it. The next thing that you need before you start the querying journey is an agent tracker. This is a spreadsheet where you are going to write down every individual agent's name that you want to reach out to, the agency that they work at, their submissions email or their, contact instructions, the date that you reached out to them, and the result. You really, really need to stay organized because ultimately you're probably going to reach out to dozens of agents, and having a one-stop shop tracker where you understand where you're at with each individual submission is going to be very helpful, because there are situations in which you can potentially follow up to agents. So you want to know how long it's been since you reached out to them, and there are situations in which if an agent offers you representation or asks for a full manuscript, you can go back to the other agents who haven't yet responded. So you want to make sure you have that place where you can easily see who is still considering your query. If you're not sure which agents you want to reach out to, or you're in the process of building your agent list, check out my video on how to pick literary agents to query. I go through some specific tips you really need to keep in mind. It is much more about finding the right fit than just querying every single agent who represents your genre, because as we know, genre can be a bit of an oversimplification. So I really recommend checking that video out before building your agent list. Now, the last thing that you really need, and it's a big one, before you are ready to query agents is a resilient attitude. You are going to get rejected and you are going to get ghosted if you do it right. That's just the name of the game, and it's unfortunate and it's hard, but it happens. And pretty much every single author who has ultimately scored representation has gone through that. I always say that finding an agent is like dating, because you really are looking for that perfect match. If you get rejected by an agent, it hurts, but you really just have to move on because there are other fish in this sea. So keep going, keep your head up, and maintain that resilient attitude. So just to wrap up, some other logistical questions I get asked often is really what time of year or even what time of day to send out queries. So for time of year, really avoid summer. Typically August, most agents and editors at publishing houses kind of take the month off, and summer is really the slow months for publishing. So they probably aren't checking their submissions inbox as frequently. So I recommend avoiding the summer months, and you obviously want to avoid, the holiday season, December into January, just because, agents and editors are taking a lot of time off. And again, it's another slow season for publishing. As for time of day, it really doesn't matter, morning, noon, night, because every individual agent manages their submissions inbox differently, and frankly, they're most likely not going to look at your query letter as soon as it comes in. It's probably going to be a situation in which they're reviewing a batch of queries at a designated time of day. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I hope these tips help you feel more confident that you are ready to query literary agents, or if you're not, it gives you a map of what you need to do before you get there. As I mentioned, I have a lot of videos helping writers through the querying process, so if you found this content helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so I can keep bringing you all the tips I have. Thanks so much for watching, and happy writing.